The dust settled around Zara Remington's boots as she surveyed the fence line that had collapsed during last night's storm, and she knew with absolute certainty that she could not keep this ranch running alone much longer. 3 months had passed since Thomas Remington had ridden off toward California with promises of striking gold and returning within 6 weeks, leaving her with 200 acres of struggling rangeland, 40 head of cattle, and a determination that was beginning to crack like the parched earth beneath her feet. The year was 1881, and Circleville, Utah, sat nestled in a valley where the Tushar Mountains painted purple shadows across the horizon each evening, a small community of ranchers and farmers who believed a woman had no business running a spread by herself. She pressed her palm against the rough wooden post, feeling splinters catch at her calloused skin. The wind whipped strands of dark hair across her face, and she pushed them back with the same gesture she had used 1,000 times before. At 24 years old, Zara had imagined her life would look different than this. She had married Thomas when she was 21, full of hope and dreams about building something lasting together. He had been charming and ambitious, always talking about the next big opportunity, the next way to make their fortune. But ambition without follow-through had left her here, alone, watching everything they had built begin to crumble. The cattle needed to be moved to the eastern pasture where the grass still grew thick near the creek. The barn roof had 3 holes that leaked during every rain. The vegetable garden she had planted was producing well enough, but it could not sustain her through winter without the money from selling cattle. She needed help, but hiring hands cost money she did not have, and most men in town would not work for a woman anyway. Zara walked back toward the house, a modest structure Thomas had built when they first claimed this land. The wood had weathered to a soft gray, and the porch sagged slightly on the left side. Inside, everything remained exactly as she had left it that morning before dawn. The dishes from her solitary breakfast, the ledger book open on the table showing numbers that refused to balance, no matter how many times she calculated them. The empty chair across from hers where Thomas used to sit. She poured herself water from the pitcher and drank deeply, then set about preparing a simple lunch of bread and preserves. Through the window she could see the mountains standing eternal and unmoved by human struggle. Sometimes their permanence comforted her. Today they only reminded her how small and temporary her problems were in the grand scheme of things, which somehow made them feel even more isolating. The sound of hoofbeats drew her attention. Zara moved to the window, her hand instinctively moving to the rifle that hung above the door. Strangers did not often venture this far from town without reason. She watched as a lone rider approached, sitting tall in the saddle on a bay horse that looked well cared for and strong. As he drew closer, she could make out more details. A man in his late 20s, wearing a dark hat pulled low against the sun, a worn leather vest over a blue shirt, and chaps that had seen plenty of hard use. He stopped his horse a respectful distance from the house and dismounted with easy grace. Zara grabbed the rifle and stepped out onto the porch, not aiming it at him, but making sure he saw she had it. "That is far enough," she called out, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. The man raised both hands in a gesture of peace. "Madam, I mean no trouble. Name is Vincent Vance. I have been working up at the Morrison Ranch about 15 miles north of here, and I heard in town you might be needing help with your place." Zara studied him carefully. He had an honest face, weathered by sun and wind, with dark eyes that met hers directly. His jaw was shadowed with several days of stubble, and a scar ran along his left cheek, but there was nothing threatening in his posture. Still, she had learned to be cautious. "I do not have money to pay for help," she said bluntly. Vincent nodded slowly. "Morrison let most of his hands go last week. Said he could not afford to keep us through winter. I have been working ranches since I was 14 years old, madam. I know cattle, I know horses, and I can fix just about anything that needs fixing. I would work for room and board until you can afford to pay me proper wages. That barn out there has a loft that would suit me just fine." "Why would you work for nothing?" Zara asked, suspicion tinging her words. "What do you want?" "Honest work and a place to stay while I figure out my next move," Vincent replied. Winter is coming on, and I would rather spend it working a ranch than drifting from town to town looking for odd jobs. You need help, and I need a place. Seems like it might work out for both of us. Zara wanted to refuse. Accepting help from a strange man felt like admitting she could not handle things herself, and she had spent 3 months proving to everyone in Circleville that she could manage. But the collapsed fence line stretched out behind her like evidence of her failure, and winter truly was coming. She could not afford pride when survival was at stake. "What do you know about mending fences?" she asked. "Everything," Vincent said simply. She studied him for another long moment, weighing her options and finding them few. Finally, she lowered the rifle. "The fence line on the north side collapsed last night. If you can get it repaired by sunset, I will consider your offer. There are tools in the barn and spare posts stacked on the east side. If you do a poor job, you ride out tonight. If you do good work, we can discuss terms." Vincent's expression did not change, but she thought she saw something like respect flicker in his eyes. "Fair enough, madam. I will get started right away." He led his horse toward the barn, and Zara watched him go, wondering if she had just made a terrible mistake or the best decision in months. She returned the rifle to its place and went back inside, but found herself drifting to the window repeatedly throughout the afternoon. Watching Vincent work in the distance, he moved with efficiency and purpose, setting posts and stringing wire with the practiced ease of someone who had done this work 1,000 times before. He did not stop to rest, did not waste motion, just worked steadily under the hot sun. By the time shadows began to stretch long across the valley, Zara walked out to inspect his work. The fence line stood straight and strong, better than it had looked even before the storm. Vincent had reinforced the weak points and replaced all the damaged wire. He was tightening the last strand when she approached, his shirt dark with sweat despite the cooling evening air. "You do good work," Zara said, running her hand along the fence to test its strength. "Thank you, madam." Vincent wiped his brow with his sleeve and gathered up the tools. "My name is Zara Remington," she said. "You can stop calling me madam like I'm some old woman. Mrs. Remington will do." "Yes, Mrs. Remington." There was no mockery in his tone, only respect. She took a breath, committing to the decision. "The barn loft is yours if you want it. I cannot pay you wages yet, but I can provide 3 meals a day and a roof over your head. I need help moving the cattle to the east pasture, fixing the barn roof, and preparing the place for winter. Once I sell the cattle in the fall, I will have money to pay you properly." "That sounds more than fair," Vincent said. "I have some rules," Zara continued, her voice firm. "You stay in the barn. You do not come to the house unless I call you for meals. You do your work and keep to yourself. I do not care about your past or where you came from, but I will not tolerate drinking, gambling, or bringing trouble to my property. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear, Mrs. Remington." "Good. There is a water pump behind the barn where you can wash up. Supper will be ready in an hour." Zara turned and walked back to the house, feeling the weight of his gaze on her back but refusing to look over her shoulder. She had just invited a stranger to live on her property, and the reality of that decision settled over her like a heavy blanket. But she had also just gained help she desperately needed, and that counted for something. She prepared a substantial meal of fried salt pork, beans, cornbread, and coffee, making enough for 2. When she rang the bell on the porch, Vincent appeared within minutes, his hair damp from washing and his shirt changed to a clean one. He removed his hat before entering and stood awkwardly in the doorway until she gestured to the table. They ate in silence at first, the scrape of forks against plates the only sound. Zara had grown accustomed to eating alone, but having someone across from her felt both comforting and unsettling. Finally, she decided to break the silence. "You said you have been working ranches since you were 14. Where did you grow up?" "West Texas, madam. Mrs. Remington," Vincent corrected himself quickly. "My father had a small spread outside of Fort Stockton. He died when I was 16, and the bank took the land. I have been hiring on at different ranches ever since, learning the trade and saving what I can." "Do you have family?" "A sister back in Texas, married with children. We write when we can." He took a sip of coffee. "What about you? Your people from around here?" Zara hesitated, then decided there was no harm in the truth. I grew up in Denver. My father worked for the railroad. I married Thomas Remington 3 years ago, and we came out here to start this ranch. He left 3 months ago to look for gold in California, said he would be back in 6 weeks. But he has not come back, Vincent said quietly. No. The single word held volumes of disappointment and anger. I keep thinking maybe he got delayed, or his letters got lost, or something happened. But the truth is, I do not know where he is or if he is coming back at all. So I work the ranch and hope for the best. Vincent nodded slowly. For what it is worth, any man who would leave you alone to manage a spread like this is a fool. The unexpected compliment caught Zara off guard. She felt heat rise to her cheeks and busied herself with clearing the plates. We should make a list of everything that needs doing before winter. I figure we have maybe 6 weeks if we are lucky, 8 if the weather holds. They spent the next hour going over the ranch's needs, and Zara found herself impressed by Vincent's knowledge and practical suggestions. He knew exactly how much hay they would need to get the cattle through winter, which repairs were critical and which could wait, and how to prioritize their limited resources. By the time he returned to the barn for the night, Zara felt something she had not felt in months: hope. The next morning, they started moving cattle to the east pasture. It was hard, hot work that required long hours in the saddle. Vincent proved himself skilled with both horse and rope, cutting out individual animals and guiding them where they needed to go with minimal fuss. Zara worked alongside him, grateful for his competence but careful to maintain her distance. She caught him watching her a few times with an expression she could not quite read, but he always looked away quickly and returned to work. Over the following weeks, a routine developed. They worked from sunup to sundown, tackling each task on their list with methodical determination. Vincent repaired the barn roof, reinforced the corral fences, and helped Zara prepare the winter feed. They worked mostly in companionable silence, though gradually they began to talk more during meals. Vincent told stories about the different ranches where he had worked, painting pictures of vast Texas ranges and the hard men who worked them. Zara found herself sharing memories of her childhood in Denver, carefully avoiding too many details about her marriage. One evening, about a month after Vincent had arrived, Zara noticed him favoring his left shoulder as he carried water buckets to the horse trough. She stepped out onto the porch and called to him. "You are hurt." "Just a pulled muscle," Vincent said, setting down the buckets with visible relief. "Nothing serious. Come inside, I have liniment that will help." He hesitated, remembering her rule about staying out of the house, but she waved away his concern. "Do not be stubborn. You are no good to me if you cannot work." Vincent followed her inside, and she directed him to sit at the table. She retrieved the liniment from her medicine cabinet and stood behind him. "You will need to remove your shirt." He did so slowly, revealing a muscled back marked with old scars. Zara tried not to stare, focusing instead on the tense muscles around his shoulder blade. She poured liniment into her palm and began to work it into his skin, her fingers finding the knots and working them loose with practiced pressure. Her mother had taught her this skill years ago when her father would come home sore from long days of manual labor. "You have done this before," Vincent said, his voice tight with a mixture of pain and something else. "My father used to get terrible muscle aches from his work. I learned to help him." She continued working, feeling the tension slowly release under her hands. The intimacy of the moment was not lost on her, the heat of his skin beneath her fingers, the quiet evening light filtering through the windows, the way his breathing changed as the pain eased. When she finished, Vincent stood and pulled his shirt back on, his movements careful. "Thank you, Mrs. Remington. That feels much better." "You should rest tomorrow," Zara said, though she knew he would not. "The work will not do itself." He met her eyes, and something passed between them, a recognition of shared struggle and mutual respect that went beyond employer and employee. Then he nodded and left, the screen door closing softly behind him. Zara stood alone in her kitchen, staring at her hands. She could still feel the warmth of his skin, the solid reality of another person beneath her touch. Thomas had been gone for 4 months now, and she had stopped expecting him to return. The realization that she might need to build a life without him had been creeping up on her gradually, but tonight it crystallized into certainty. She was alone, and she would likely remain alone, and she needed to accept that reality. But having Vincent on the ranch had changed something. The work felt less crushing when shared. The evenings felt less lonely with someone to talk to over supper. She found herself looking forward to seeing him each morning, to the quiet conversations they shared, to the way he listened when she talked about her plans for the ranch. It was dangerous territory, she knew. He was an employee, a drifter, who would likely move on come spring, and she was still technically a married woman. October brought cooler temperatures and the urgent need to prepare for winter. They worked even longer hours, racing against the calendar. One afternoon, while they were reinforcing the hay storage shed, Vincent suddenly stopped working and looked toward the horizon. "Riders coming," he said quietly. Zara followed his gaze and saw 3 men approaching from the direction of town. As they drew closer, she recognized Jim Patterson, who owned the land adjacent to hers, along with 2 men she did not know. Her stomach tightened. Patterson had made it clear months ago that he thought a woman had no business running a ranch and had offered to buy her out for far less than the land was worth. The men rode up to where Zara and Vincent stood. Patterson, a heavy man in his 50s with a perpetual sneer, looked down at them from his horse. "Mrs. Remington," he said, not bothering to tip his hat, "I see you hired yourself some help, though I wonder how you are paying for it, given your situation." "My business is my own, Mr. Patterson," Zara replied coolly. "What can I do for you?" "I am here to renew my offer to purchase your land. Winter is coming, and you will not make it through. Better to sell now while you can still get something for it." "I have already told you my land is not for sale." Patterson's eyes narrowed. "Your husband has been gone near 5 months now. At some point, you need to accept he is not coming back and make sensible decisions. A woman cannot run a ranch alone, especially not through a Utah winter." "She is not alone," Vincent said quietly, his voice carrying an edge that made Patterson's companions shift in their saddles. Patterson looked at Vincent as if truly seeing him for the first time. "And who might you be?" "Vincent Vance. I work here." "Work for what? She has no money to pay you." "That is between Mrs. Remington and myself," Vincent replied, his posture relaxed but his eyes hard. Patterson laughed, a cruel sound. "I see how it is. You think you can move in on another man's wife while he's away? There are words for women like that, Mrs. Remington." Vincent moved so fast that Zara barely registered it. One moment he was standing beside her, the next he had his hand on Patterson's boot, ready to pull the man from his horse. "You will apologize to Mrs. Remington, or you will have words with me." The 2 men with Patterson reached for their guns, but Vincent did not flinch. "Your friends can pull those weapons if they want, but you will still hit the ground before they clear leather, and then we will see how things go from there." The tension stretched taut as wire. Zara's heart hammered in her chest, but she kept her voice level. "Vincent, let him go." "Not until he apologizes." Patterson's face had gone red, but he could feel the iron strength in Vincent's grip and see the serious intent in his eyes. "I apologize," he ground out. "I spoke out of turn." Vincent released him and stepped back. "Mrs. Remington told you her land is not for sale. I suggest you respect that and move along." Patterson jerked his horse around, his companions following suit. "You are making a mistake," he called back to Zara. "Both of you." They watched the 3 men ride away until they disappeared from view. Zara released a breath she had not known she was holding. "You should not have done that. Patterson has friends in town. He could make trouble." "He already was making trouble," Vincent said. "Men like him think they can intimidate anyone weaker than them. Someone needs to show them otherwise." "I can fight my own battles." "I know you can, but you do not have to fight them alone anymore." He picked up his hammer and returned to work as if nothing had happened, but Zara stood still, his words echoing in her mind. That night, she could not sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Vincent's words and actions, about the way he had defended her without hesitation, about the fact that she had not felt this safe in months. Thomas had never made her feel protected. He had been full of grand plans and promises, but when things got difficult, he left. Vincent had appeared with nothing but a horse and his skills, asking for nothing but room and board, and had given her back something she thought she had lost, the belief that she could actually make this work. She heard footsteps outside and rose to look out the window. Vincent was walking the perimeter of the property, checking fences and looking out into the darkness. It was something he did most nights, she had noticed, as if standing guard. She watched his silhouette move through the moonlight, and something in her chest ached with a longing she had been trying to suppress. The next morning at breakfast, Zara found herself studying Vincent's face as he ate. The scar on his cheek, the lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun, the way his hair fell across his forehead. He was a handsome man, she realized, though not in the conventional way Thomas had been. There was something solid about Vincent, something dependable that went bone deep. "You are staring at me," Vincent said, without looking up from his plate. "I was thinking," Zara replied, not embarrassed to be caught, "about what you said yesterday about not fighting alone." He did look up then, his dark eyes meeting hers. "I meant it." "I know you did. That is what I was thinking about." She set down her fork. "Vincent, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Always. Why are you really here? Men do not work for months without wages out of simple kindness. What do you want?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. "When I rode up that first day, I told you I had heard in town that you needed help. That was true. But what I did not tell you was that I had been watching this place for a few days before I came to your door. I saw you out there working yourself to exhaustion, trying to hold this ranch together. I saw your determination and your strength. And I thought to myself that here was someone worth helping. But why? Because I've spent 12 years drifting from ranch to ranch, never putting down roots, never building anything that was mine. I am tired of it. When I saw you fighting to keep this place, I saw someone who had what I wanted, something worth fighting for. I thought maybe if I helped you save your ranch, I might figure out how to build something for myself too." The raw honesty in his words took her breath away. "And have you? Figured it out?" Vincent held her gaze. "I think maybe I have, but it is complicated because what I want and what is right might not be the same thing." Zara understood exactly what he meant because she felt the same pull, the same growing attachment that could not be acted upon. "Thomas might come back." "He might," Vincent agreed. "And if he does, I will move on. But Zara, if I can call you that when we are alone, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that he will not. It has been almost 5 months. That is a long time for a man to be gone without word." "I know." She had been avoiding this truth, but hearing Vincent speak it aloud made it real. "If he does not come back, if another month passes and there is still no word, then I will have to decide what to do, whether to have him declared legally dead or get a divorce or just accept that I am a married woman whose husband abandoned her." "Whatever you decide, I will respect it," Vincent said, "but I want you to know something. These past weeks working beside you have been the best of my life. You are strong and smart and capable, and any man with sense would be proud to stand beside you. Thomas Remington is a fool for leaving, and if he never comes back, that is his loss." Tears pricked at Zara's eyes, but she blinked them back. "You are making this very difficult." "I am sorry, but you asked for honesty." "I did." She stood and began clearing the dishes, needing to move, to do something with her hands. "We should get back to work. Those cattle will not feed themselves." Vincent stood as well, but as he passed her on the way to the door, he paused. "For what it is worth, I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to leave. Whatever happens with Thomas, whatever you decide, I will be here." After he left, Zara gripped the edge of the sink and let the tears come. She cried for the marriage that had failed, for the husband who had abandoned her, for the lonely months of struggle and fear, but she also cried with something that felt almost like relief, because Vincent's words had given her permission to acknowledge what she had been feeling, even if she could not act on it yet. November arrived with frost on the ground each morning and the first hints of winter in the air. They finished the last of the major preparations, and Zara felt a sense of accomplishment she had not experienced in years. The ranch was as ready for winter as it could be, the cattle were healthy and well-fed, and she had money enough from selling a few head to buy supplies for the cold months ahead. One afternoon, while they were working in the barn organizing tools, a sudden snowstorm blew in. Within minutes, visibility dropped to almost nothing. Vincent looked out the barn door at the swirling white. "We should wait this out before heading to the house," he said. "These mountain storms can be fierce, and it is not worth risking getting lost between here and there." Zara nodded, wrapping her arms around herself against the sudden cold. Vincent found some old blankets in the tack room and brought them over, draping one around her shoulders. They sat on hay bales, watching the storm rage outside the open door. The world had disappeared behind a curtain of white, and the barn felt like its own isolated universe. Vincent built a small fire in an old metal barrel they used for burning scraps, and the flickering light cast dancing shadows on the walls. "Tell me about Texas," Zara said, wanting to break the intimate silence. Vincent smiled, a rare sight that transformed his serious face. "Texas is big in a way that is hard to explain. You can ride for days and still be in the same county. The sky goes on forever. And at night the stars are so bright you feel like you could reach up and touch them. The land is hard and harsh, but there is a beauty to it if you know how to look." "Do you miss it?" "Sometimes, but I do not have anything there anymore. My sister has her own life, and the ranch where I grew up belongs to someone else now. It is just a place like any other place." He poked at the fire with a stick. "What about Denver? Do you miss it?" "Not really," Zara admitted. "I was never suited to city life. Too many people, too much noise, too many rules about how a woman should behave. Out here, I can be myself. I can work hard and speak my mind, and nobody tells me I should be more ladylike." "I like that about you," Vincent said quietly. "You do not pretend to be something you are not." "There is no point in pretending. Life is hard enough without adding lies to it." They fell silent again, but it was a comfortable silence now. The storm continued its fury outside, but inside the barn felt warm and safe. Zara found her eyes growing heavy, the exhaustion of weeks of hard work catching up with her. She shifted on the hay bale, trying to find a more comfortable position. "You can lean on me if you want," Vincent offered. "I do not mind." Zara hesitated, knowing she should refuse, knowing it was dangerous territory, but she was tired and cold, and he was there, solid and warm and offering comfort. She shifted closer and leaned her head against his shoulder. He adjusted the blanket so it covered both of them, his arm coming around her shoulders in a gesture that felt both protective and intimate. "This is improper," Zara murmured, but she did not pull away. "Probably," Vincent agreed, "but there is nobody here to see except the horses, and they will not tell." She could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing, the warmth of his body seeping into hers. It had been so long since she had felt this kind of simple human contact, this closeness that required nothing but presence. She closed her eyes and let herself drift, not quite sleeping but not fully awake either, suspended in a moment that felt stolen from real life. When she woke, the storm had passed and the world outside sparkled with fresh snow. Vincent was still beside her, his arms still around her shoulders, his head tilted back against the barn wall. She studied his face in the soft afternoon light, memorizing the details, the dark lashes resting against his cheeks, the slight part of his lips, the way he looked younger and more peaceful in sleep. As if sensing her gaze, his eyes opened. For a moment, they just looked at each other, and Zara felt the pull between them like a physical force. It would be so easy to close the distance, to let herself feel something good after months of struggle and loneliness. But she could not yet. Not while the question of Thomas still hung over everything. "The storm has passed," she said softly, pulling away, and immediately missing his warmth. "So it has." Vincent stood and offered her his hand to help her up. "We should get you back to the house before another one blows in." They walked through the snow in silence, their footprints the first to mark the pristine white. At the porch steps, Zara turned to face him. "Vincent, about what happened in the barn." "Nothing happened in the barn," he said gently. "You were cold and tired, and I offered you a comfortable place to rest. That is all." She knew he was giving her an out, a way to pretend the intimacy of those hours meant nothing. But she did not want to pretend. "Thank you," she said instead, "for everything." That night, lying in her bed, Zara made a decision. She would give Thomas until the end of the year. If he had not returned or sent word by then, she would take steps to legally end their marriage. It was not fair to Vincent to keep him in limbo, and it was not fair to herself to keep living in this state of suspended reality. She deserved to know where she stood, to be able to move forward with her life, whatever form that took. December arrived with heavy snows and cold that settled deep into the bones. They moved most of their work indoors, tending to the animals in the barn and making small repairs to equipment. The work was less pressing now, which meant more time spent in conversation, more opportunities for their relationship to deepen beyond the practical partnership they had maintained. One evening, as they sat by the fire after supper, Vincent asked, "What will you do if Thomas comes back?" Zara had been expecting this question, had been asking it of herself. "I do not know," she admitted. "Part of me thinks I should honor my vows, take him back, and try to rebuild our marriage. But a bigger part of me knows that what we had is broken beyond repair. He left me when I needed him most. That is not something I can forget. And if he does not come back," she met his eyes across the fire, "then I will end the marriage legally and move forward with my life. This ranch is mine, not his. He put it in my name when we bought it because he thought it did not matter who owned what between husband and wife. But it does matter, especially now. I have built something here, and I am not giving it up for anyone." Vincent nodded slowly. "You are a remarkable woman, Zara Remington. I am just doing what needs to be done." "No, you are doing more than that. You are creating a life on your own terms. That takes courage." Christmas came quietly. Zara made a special meal with a chicken she had been saving and dried fruit she had purchased in town. They ate together by lamplight, and afterward Vincent produced a small wrapped package from his pocket. "I know we did not talk about gifts," he said, suddenly looking uncertain, "but I saw this in town last month and thought of you." Zara unwrapped the paper to find a leather journal with her initials embossed on the cover. Inside, the first page bore an inscription in Vincent's careful handwriting, "For recording all that you build." "It is beautiful," she breathed, running her fingers over the soft leather. "Thank you. I thought you might want to keep track of the ranch's progress, write down your plans and such." "I will." She stood and retrieved something from the other room, returning with a package of her own. "I made this for you." Vincent unwrapped it to find a heavy wool scarf in deep blue, hand-knitted with obvious care. He held it up, clearly moved by the gift. "You made this?" "I worked on it at night after you went to the barn. It gets cold out there, and you need something to keep you warm." He wrapped the scarf around his neck, and the blue brought out the warmth in his dark eyes. "Thank you, Zara. I will treasure it." They stood there in the lamplight, gifts in hand, and the air between them felt charged with all the things they had not said, all the feelings they had not acknowledged. Finally, Vincent cleared his throat. "I should let you get some rest. Morning comes early." "Vincent, wait!" Zara reached out and caught his hand. "It is Christmas. You should not spend it alone in the barn. Stay here tonight. You can sleep in the spare room." He looked at their joined hands, then up at her face. "Are you sure?" "I am sure." That night, knowing Vincent slept just down the hall, Zara felt less alone than she had in months. It was not improper, she told herself. It was simply kindness on a cold winter night. But she knew it was more than that. and she suspected Vincent knew it too. The new year of 1882 arrived with bitter cold and heavy snow that kept them close to the house for days at a time. They fell into an easy domesticity, working together on small projects, reading by the fire in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing. Vincent moved his few possessions into the spare room without discussion, and it felt right. Felt like how things should have been all along. One night in late January, almost 6 months to the day since Thomas had left, Zara sat down and wrote 2 letters. The first was to the territorial courthouse in Salt Lake City, requesting information about legal separation or divorce. The second was to the last address she had for Thomas's friend in California, asking if anyone had heard from him. She showed the letters to Vincent before sealing them. "I need to know," she said. "One way or another, I need to move forward. I understand." He covered her hand with his. "Whatever answers come back, we will deal with them together." The word "we" settled around them like a promise. Zara sealed the letters and set them aside to mail when the weather cleared. That night, she lay in bed and thought about the future for the first time in months with something approaching joy. She did not know what would happen, but she knew Vincent would be there, and that made all the difference. February brought a brief thaw, and Vincent made the trip into Circleville to mail the letters and pick up supplies. While there, he learned that Jim Patterson had been spreading rumors about Zara and her hired hand, suggesting their relationship was improper and that she was a disgrace to decent women. Vincent debated whether to tell Zara about the gossip and decided she deserved to know what she was facing. That evening over supper, he relayed what he had heard in town. Zara's face flushed with anger. "Let them talk. I have done nothing wrong." "I know that. But Patterson has influence, and if he turns the town against you, it could make things difficult when you need to do business." "What would you have me do? Send you away to protect my reputation? I will not do it. I need your help. And more than that, I want you here." The admission hung in the air between them. Vincent reached across the table and took her hand. "I am not going anywhere. But maybe we should give thought to how we handle this situation going forward. Those letters you sent will take weeks to get responses, and in the meantime, people will talk." "Let them talk," Zara repeated firmly. "I am not living my life based on what Jim Patterson or anyone else thinks. If they choose to think poorly of me, that is their choice. I know the truth." "And what is the truth?" Vincent asked softly. Zara looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. "The truth is that you saved this ranch and probably saved me too. The truth is that I trust you more than I have ever trusted anyone. The truth is that I'm grateful every single day that you rode up to my door and offered your help. Is that all?" She knew what he was asking, what he wanted her to say, but the words stuck in her throat, held back by the fact that she was still legally another man's wife. "Ask me again when the letters come back," she whispered. Vincent brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. "I will wait as long as it takes." March arrived with the first hints of spring. The snow began to melt, revealing the brown earth beneath, and the cattle grew restless in their winter confinement, ready for fresh grass. Zara and Vincent began planning for the year ahead, discussing which fields to rotate, when to breed the cows, how to expand their herd. One afternoon, a rider arrived from town carrying mail. Zara's hands shook as she opened the first letter from the courthouse in Salt Lake City. It outlined the process for legal separation and divorce, noting that abandonment by a spouse for 6 months or more was grounds for divorce in Utah territory. The process would take several months and require her to place a notice in the newspaper, but it was possible. The second letter was from California. Thomas's friend wrote that he had seen Thomas briefly in late September. Thomas had been drinking heavily and gambling away what little gold he had found. He mentioned being too ashamed to return home empty-handed and talked about heading further north to try his luck in Oregon. That was the last anyone had heard of him. The friend expressed doubt that Thomas would return and suggested Zara should consider herself free to move on with her life. Zara read both letters twice, then handed them to Vincent. He read them carefully, his expression unreadable. "So he is alive, or was in September," Vincent said finally, "but it seems clear he does not intend to come back." "It seems that way." Zara felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that she finally had answers. Sadness that her marriage had ended not with a dramatic break, but with this pathetic whimper of abandonment. "I am going to proceed with the divorce. It will take months, but at least I will know I'm moving towards something instead of just waiting." "Are you certain? Once you start this process, there is no going back?" "I am certain. Thomas made his choice when he left and never came back. Now I am making mine." She looked at Vincent, really looked at him, letting him see everything she felt. "I am choosing to build a life here, on this ranch, with someone who wants to build it alongside me." Vincent stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I will be here, Zara. Through all of it, I will be here." She buried her face in his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of him, feeling the solid strength of his embrace. "I know you will." That evening, they sat together on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. Vincent had his arm around her shoulders, and Zara leaned into his warmth, marveling at how natural it felt, how right. "My father used to say that the best things in life come from the hardest struggles," Zara said quietly. "I never understood what he meant until now. If Thomas had not left, if I had not been forced to manage this ranch alone, you never would have come here. I never would have discovered how strong I could be. I never would have found this." "Found what?" "This feeling, this partnership, this sense that I am exactly where I am supposed to be." She turned to look at him. "You." Vincent cupped her face in his hand, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "I have been falling in love with you since the day I rode up and saw you standing on this porch with a rifle in your hands, determined to protect what was yours. Every day since has only made it deeper." "I love you too," Zara whispered, finally saying the words she had been holding back for months. "I think I have loved you for a while now, but I could not let myself admit it." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, a kiss full of promise and patience, and all the tomorrows they would share. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "We should probably wait until the divorce is final before we make any formal plans," Zara said, trying to be practical even as her heart soared. "Probably," Vincent agreed, "but that does not change how I feel or what I want. When you are free, Zara Remington, I'm going to ask you to marry me properly, and we are going to build this ranch into something amazing together." "Is that a proposal?" "That is a promise. The proposal will come later when you can actually say yes without legal complications." Zara laughed, a sound of pure joy. "I will hold you to that promise, Vincent Vance." The next months passed in a blur of work and waiting. Zara filed the necessary paperwork for divorce, published the required notices in the newspaper, and endured the gossip and judgment from some of the townspeople. But she also found unexpected allies, other women who had struggled alone, shopkeepers who respected her determination, and even a few ranchers who admitted grudgingly that she had done a fine job keeping her place running. Jim Patterson continued to spread rumors and make trouble, but his influence waned as people saw that Zara and Vincent ran their ranch with propriety and success. When Patterson showed up drunk one evening demanding that Zara sell to him, Vincent escorted him off the property with a firm warning not to return. After that, Patterson left them alone. Summer arrived with long days perfect for working the land. The cattle thrived on fresh grass, and Zara's garden produced abundantly. Vincent built a new chicken coop and repaired the porch, making good on all the small improvements they had planned. They worked side by side from dawn to dusk, but now they did so with open affection, stealing kisses in the barn, holding hands while walking the fence lines, sleeping in the same bed even though they maintained propriety in public. In August, almost exactly 1 year after Vincent had first arrived, the final divorce decree came through. Zara was officially free, no longer bound to Thomas Remington or the failed promises of their marriage. That evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Vincent got down on one knee. "Zara Remington, you are the strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever known. You have taught me what it means to build something worth keeping, to put down roots and fight for what matters. I want to spend the rest of my life working this ranch beside you, building a family with you and loving you with everything I have. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Zara said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely, yes." Vincent slid a simple gold band onto her finger, a ring he had commissioned from a jeweler in the nearest large town. It fit perfectly, and Zara thought it was more beautiful than the elaborate ring Thomas had given her years ago. They were married in September in a simple ceremony at the small church in Circleville. Most of the town attended, curiosity overcoming any lingering scandal. Zara wore a new dress she had sewn herself, pale blue cotton with white lace at the collar, and carried wildflowers from the ranch. Vincent wore his best clothes and could not stop smiling as he said his vows. After the ceremony, they held a celebration at the ranch. Tables groaned under the weight of food brought by neighbors, and someone produced a fiddle for dancing. As Zara danced with her new husband under the stars, she thought about how far she had come from that desperate woman alone on a failing ranch. She had lost one life and built another, better one from the ashes. The first years of their marriage were busy and productive. They expanded the herd, improved the ranch buildings, and established a reputation for quality cattle. Vincent proved to be not just a skilled worker, but a smart businessman, negotiating good prices and making connections with buyers from larger cities. Zara managed the books and the day-to-day operations, and together they made a formidable team. In the spring of 1884, Zara discovered she was pregnant. The baby was due in late autumn, and both she and Vincent were thrilled but nervous. They had built so much together already, but a child would change everything. Vincent became even more protective, insisting Zara not overwork herself. She rolled her eyes at his fussing, but secretly loved his attentiveness. He talked to her growing belly at night, telling their unborn child about the ranch and all the things they would do together. In November, after a long but relatively easy labor, Zara gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him William Vincent Vance, and he had his father's dark hair and his mother's determined chin. Vincent held his son with trembling hands, tears streaming down his face, and Zara felt her heart expand with more love than she had thought possible. The years that followed brought both challenges and joys. They weathered harsh winters and dry summers, lost cattle to disease and predators, struggled with falling beef prices and rising expenses. But they also thrived, adding 2 more children to their family, a daughter named Emma in 1886 and another son named Robert in 1889. The ranch grew into one of the most successful in the valley. Vincent's hard work and Zara's sharp business sense made them prosperous enough to hire help, allowing them to focus more on their growing family. They built a larger house to accommodate their children, adding rooms and a real wood floor and glass windows that let in the mountain light. Jim Patterson eventually gave up trying to acquire their land and moved away to California himself, chasing some new scheme. Other neighbors became friends, recognizing that Zara and Vincent had built something rare and valuable through their partnership and dedication. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Vincent took Zara up to the ridge overlooking their property. From this vantage point, they could see everything they had built: the house, the barns, the corrals, the cattle grazing peacefully in the fields, the smoke rising from the chimney where their children were home with the hired housekeeper. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Zara asked, leaning against her husband's chest. "Sometimes," Vincent admitted. "If Thomas had not left, if Morrison had not let me go, if I had not heard about a stubborn woman trying to run a ranch alone. So many things had to happen to bring me to your door that day." "I used to be angry about Thomas leaving," Zara said. "I felt abandoned and betrayed, but now I am grateful. If he had stayed, I never would have found you. I never would have discovered my own strength. Our children would not exist. This life we have built would not exist." Vincent turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Zara Vance. Every day I wake up grateful that you took a chance on a drifter looking for work." "You were never just a drifter," Zara said, reaching up to touch his face. The scar on his cheek was as familiar to her now as her own reflection. "You were exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it. You were home finding its way to me." They kissed there on the ridge, the wind whipping around them, the sun warm on their faces. Below, their children played in the yard of the home they had built together. Around them stretched land they had worked with their own hands, marked with their sweat and sacrifice and stubborn determination to build something lasting. As they walked back down to the house, hand in hand, Zara thought about the frightened, desperate woman she had been that day when Vincent first rode up. That woman had been strong, but she had been alone. Now she was stronger still, but she was no longer alone, and that made all the difference. Life continued its rhythms through the years. William grew into a responsible young man who loved the ranch as much as his parents did. Emma was bright and spirited, with her mother's determination and her father's steady nature. Robert was the wild one, always getting into mischief, but with a heart of gold. Vincent and Zara raised them with love and firm guidance, teaching them the value of hard work and the importance of building something worth keeping. In 1895, when William turned 21, they made him a full partner in the ranch. He had earned it through years of dedicated work and smart decisions. The ranch had become more than what Zara and Vincent could have imagined that first difficult year, and they were proud to pass some of that legacy to their son. They received word, eventually, about Thomas. He had died in Oregon in 1887, killed in a logging accident. By then, so much time had passed that Zara felt only a distant sadness for the man he had been and the life they had briefly shared. She said a prayer for his soul and moved on, her present too full of love and purpose to dwell on the past. On a warm evening in the summer of 1900, Vincent and Zara sat on the porch of their home, much as they had done countless times over the years. They were older now, his hair gray at the temples and her hands showing the marks of hard work, but the love between them had only deepened with time. "Do you remember that first day?" Zara asked, "when you showed up offering to fix my fence?" Vincent smiled. "I remember thinking you were going to shoot me if I said the wrong thing. You were fierce even then." "I was terrified," Zara admitted. "I thought I was going to lose everything. And then you appeared, like an answer to a prayer I'd been too proud to say." "We saved each other," Vincent said. "You gave me a place to belong, and I gave you the help you needed. But what we built together was so much more than either of us could have managed alone." "It was," Zara agreed. She leaned her head on his shoulder, fitting against him as perfectly as she had that snowy day in the barn almost 19 years ago. "We built a life, a good life." Around them, the ranch hummed with evening activity. William was checking on the new calves, Emma was helping her mother with the garden harvest, and Robert was mending tack in the barn. Grandchildren would come eventually, Zara thought, and the cycle would continue. The land would pass to new generations, but the foundation she and Vincent had laid would remain. As the sun set over the Tushar Mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Zara Vance felt a deep contentment settle over her. She had started as a woman alone, abandoned and struggling, but she had fought for what was hers, accepted help when it was offered, and built something beautiful and lasting with a man who had become her partner in every way that mattered. The ranch thrived. The children were healthy and happy, and she was loved deeply by a good man. After all the struggle and heartache, after the fear and uncertainty, she had found exactly what she needed: a home, a family, and a love that would last all her remaining days. Vincent's hand found hers in the gathering darkness, their fingers intertwining automatically after so many years together. No words were necessary. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear overhead, the same stars that had watched over them that first difficult year and every year since. The story that had begun with a desperate woman and a drifting cowboy had become something neither could have predicted. A partnership built on mutual respect and hard work, a love forged through challenge and triumph, and a legacy that would endure for generations. It was not the life Zara had imagined when she married Thomas Remington, but it was so much better than anything she could have planned. As darkness settled fully over the ranch, Zara and Vincent rose and walked inside together, home in every sense of the word. Behind them, the land they had worked spread out in the moonlight, waiting for tomorrow's labors and all the tomorrows after that. It was a fitting end to each day and a perfect beginning to the next, this life they had built together against all odds. The years ahead would bring their own challenges and joys, but they would face them as they had faced everything else. Together with determination and love, two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment and built something rare and precious from the hardscrabble Utah soil. It was a love story written in fence posts and cattle brands, in children's laughter and shared work, in quiet moments on the porch and the steady accumulation of days well lived. And if anyone had asked Zara whether she regretted anything about how her life had unfolded, she would have said no without hesitation. Every hardship had led her here, to this place, this man, this life. It was enough, more than enough. It was everything.